Picture this. You stay up all night watching the San Antonio Spurs play the Lakers. You know everything about the team, including the starters, the bench players, where they're from, what college they're from, their favorite food, their social security number, their family information. You study everything about the San Antonio Spurs. You're a sports fanatic. You're obsessed. You pay more attention to the ESPN box scores than you do your parents. You have more insight. You dive deep into usage rates. You study what Tim Duncan's offensive rebound percentages would be with Bruce Bowen off the court. You dive deeper. You study Tony Parker's true shooting percentage whenever his fiancée is in the audience. Now, why are you doing this? Because you heard news on Twitter that Bruce Bowen was not going to play at all and that Tim Duncan was going to come off the bench because that's what Greg Popovich hinted at in one of his interviews. And they're going to play again tonight against the Dallas Mavericks right before the playoffs. And then you start thinking, but how does that affect the pace? Naturally, Tony Parker plays a half-court offense. But if he's not playing with Tim Duncan, how will that affect it? Will it speed up the game? Will it slow it down? It's got to speed it up, right? More turnovers for Tony Parker, not as much defense from Bruce Bowen and Tim Duncan, so there's going to be a lot more scoring. Yep, that's right. That's the secret sauce. You figured it out. Tony Parker's production is going to go way up without Tim Duncan. He's going to have more opportunities to score points, to get more assists. He's just going to have the ball in his hands a lot more because he's going to have to. You convinced yourself that you would be a better coach than Greg Popovich himself. So you grab your notepad and your pen, and you start writing all this down. You pull out your calculator, you start looking at all the potential fantasy points that Tony Parker's going to get tonight starting, and you realize that you're actually projecting Tony Parker to score more points than what FanDuel is projecting. A matter of fact, a whole 2 points higher than on FanDuel. And you know what? I'm so confident in this projection that I'm not only going to bet the over at 21.5, I'm going to bet the latter, 22.5, 23.5, 24.5, because I know ball. Not only that, FanDuel's allowing me to bet as much as I want. I wonder why. Okay, now for the fun part. We're going to fast forward all the way to the game and actually split out our bets. I'm feeling confident. I bet all the overs. I have a lot of money down. And sure enough, there's Tony Parker without Tim Duncan or Bruce Bowen. Starting, he comes out hot, man. Hits the first couple baskets, dishes it down low. The guy's filling up the stat sheet. He's even grabbing rebounds because Tim Duncan's not on the floor. It's literally everything that I predicted. Until Tony Parker gets 2 quick fouls late in the first quarter. Gets pulled out. Spurs go up by 30 by half. Tony Parker doesn't see the floor the rest of the game. He ends the night with 8 total minutes. He scores 10 points, gets 4 rebounds, gets 5 assists, and I'm out about $500. I know exactly what I did wrong. I didn't account for the fact that he would be more involved, so that means more fouling, right? Well, I'm going to incorporate that into my model. Therefore, my model is completely done, and I'm ready to run this thing. I'm going to make so much more money now that I incorporate fouls. Yeah, but what if Tony Parker actually didn't get 2 fouls, and the Spurs still blew them out? So the fouls were really irrelevant. Okay, so even though it was a 2-point spread, we need to take into consideration the blowout potential, right? Oh, that's easy. I'll just incorporate it into the model. That person I'm describing is not you, it's me. And yes, I'm 32 years old, and I've gotten a chance to watch Tony Parker and the Spurs play. They are my favorite basketball team, and I used to watch religiously. I remember staying up late college nights just watching and grinding out my Spurs, trying to beat people in fantasy sports and DraftKings and trying to outsmart the books. And to be completely honest, there was some profit there. But how much time was wasted? How much money did I waste just by staying up all night and not doing something else that would earn more money, right? So the reality is this. No matter what your sports fandom looks like, no matter how many times you watch a football game, basketball game, any kind of sports team that you follow, no matter what you do, no matter what kind of personal model that you've run, I can almost guarantee you that the sports books, and I'm talking about the major sports books, are just simply sharper than you. You will not be the sports book long term. And when I say you, I mean the average viewer. Yes, there's a very, very, very small percentage of people who can actually beat the books. And don't cling on to that fact. Because chances are, if you're on YouTube watching this video right now, you probably aren't one of those bettors, and that is okay. Because I'm here to teach you exactly how to beat the sports books. It's just not the method that we described earlier. It's not the way old Matt thought he could beat the sports books. It's through a strategy called plus EV betting. In full transparency, I started plus EV betting about full-time 6 years ago. If you stay to the very end of this video, I'm going to teach you exactly how to exploit this method and actually make money by sports betting. And yes, I'm almost 5 minutes into this video, and I haven't even introduced myself. My name is Matt Downs. I am a sharp sports bettor. I've made over $550,000 over the lifetime of my sports betting career. But just like you, I am stubborn, and it's really hard for me to change my ways, right? But as soon as you start plus EV betting, you will find out that you too can also be profitable. Now, what you'll see on the screen is a Pickett screenshot. Pickett is a third-party betting tracker where you simply link up all your bets and it keeps track of your P&L, right? Your wins, your losses, how many units you're up. You can change it to dollar amounts. Highly recommend before you do anything at all to download Pickett, make sure you sync all the sportsbooks that you use. Because honesty is the best policy. You're always going to want to actually take a look at yourself in the mirror and really sit back and see if the strategy works. Now, there are countless videos on plus EV betting on YouTube. And to be quite frank, I don't really know if there's a right way to describe how to plus EV bet, because plus EV betting, by definition, is just picking out value that you believe is of better value than the sportsbook is offering, right? So really, it's subjective. Because like my Tony Parker example earlier, I believed I was making a plus EV bet. And the term plus EV betting gets thrown around a lot in this industry, and honestly, a little too much. What I want to talk about today is plus EV betting through a strategy called line comparing. It's through a form of something called technical analysis. And there's also a lot of different ways that I can paint a picture and throw out examples of how to plus EV bet. But I like using one example because it paints the picture for me. And you guys let me know in the comment section if it does help you as well. And I often compare it to the stock market, right? Even though they're completely two different things. The fact that you can make money just by yourself with a singular bankroll is what I like to compare myself when I plus EV bet, right? Because you're buying and selling stocks, right? The exact same way that you would be buying and selling bets. And I'll go over it here in just a bit. But technically, if you're taking the over of a player, you're basically buying a stock on a player, right? Kind of, sort of. And if you're selling, you're taking the under, I guess, right? At least it makes sense in my head. But I like to compare sports betting in the sports book industry directly to an example with stock trading. And here's the example. Let's say that you log on to Robinhood, right? I feel like everybody has Robinhood at this point. And you look at the stock price of Tesla at $300 a share. But you can also log on to TD Ameritrade, right? And normally you'll see that exact same price because they update real time. Every single platform is offering the exact same price for a standard share in Tesla, right? Now imagine this. Imagine you log on to TD Ameritrade and Robinhood and you see it $300 on Robinhood, the Tesla stock, but it's offered at $285 on TD Ameritrade. Like, just common sense wise, that would be insane. That means I could get a $15 discount if I just simply play Tesla or buy Tesla on TD Ameritrade. Why would I ever buy that on Robinhood, right? Why would I ever buy that Tesla stock on Robinhood? Sounds crazy on the surface, right? But that's exactly how the sportsbook market works. They're basically offering different prices for the exact same stock to buy on different platforms. Consider DraftKings, FanDuel, BetMGM, all the sportsbooks, Prize Picks, Underdog, they're all different trading platforms. They offer different prices for different projections the same way that I used in my TD Ameritrade and my Robinhood example. And it really is that simple. It's just all about identifying, the mispriced odds on certain player props and certain game lines. Whatever markets you're betting on, you can find mispricings in the market because it's a very inefficient market. Whereas the stock market, very efficient, right? They have robots trading 24/7. And to be honest, you'd be very lucky to even have a shot at mispriced stocks these days with there being so much liquidity in the market, right? And that's why sports betting can be a goldmine right now. There are hundreds of different sports books just here in the US, finding many different kinds of projections for the exact same kind of props. And luckily for you, the sports betting market is still growing like a weed. So there's more and more sports books every single day, which means more opportunities to take advantage of different prices across the market. So now, how do we actually plus EV bet? Let's actually dive into an example. I want to show you guys exactly what a plus EV bet through the form of line comparing, through price comparing, what it actually looks like. Now, in order to understand what a plus EV bet looks like, we have to understand how pricing works in the sports book. Because I'm not going to sit here and lie, the American odds system is very confusing. But all you really need to know is that American odds can be translated to a fraction, or implied odds, or a percentage. And basically, American odds are just the percent odds for a singular bet to hit. So minus 110, if you guys are looking here on the screen, translates to exactly 52.38%. Basically, if you see a standard American odds of minus 110, which is very common, by the way, on a sports book, that translates to 52.38%, meaning that sports book thinks that that specific bet has a 52.38% chance to hit. Now, stick with me here. If minus 110 is assigned to one side of a bet, right, and that's 52.38%, that must also mean that the other side of the bet must be plus 110, which equates to 47.62%, right? Because 100 minus 52.38% equals 47.62%. When you add those together, again, equals 100%. That makes sense, right? That is wrong. The sports books like to make money by tacking on what's called VIG. VIG I like to think about like a tax, right? Or a tip, like for a waiter, right? If you go into a restaurant and you pay your bill, let's call it, $50. You know before you sign your receipt that you're not actually just going to pay the $50, right? There's the tax. And then there's the tip, right? That's how the waiter makes their primary income. And I'm not saying that sports books are like restaurants. I'm saying without taxing on that extra VIG, the sports books would break even every single time, assuming they set super sharp lines. So imagine you, as a sports book, you set super sharp lines and then tack on an additional tax on top of that, right? And now what's happening is, theoretically speaking, if an over and an under line are set to minus 110 on both sides, then the overall percentage is going to be higher than 100%, right? And if a sports book is setting minus 110 to the over, minus 110 to the under, as you can see here, if you put $100 down on a minus 110 line, you're really only winning $90 and about 90 cents. So if you're setting that over to minus 110, the under to minus 110, assuming that an equal amount of money has been bet on both sides of a singular bet, that sports book is going to make money no matter what, right? Because as a sports bettor, you're not doubling up your money at a minus 110 bet. So now let's actually take a look at a real example from FanDuel Sportsbook, the biggest American sportsbook, also meaning the most action, historically speaking. So Isaiah Hartenstein, I'm looking at an NBA points prop, right? His prop is set to 7.5, meaning that his projection, 7.5, obviously can't land on 7.5. Is either going to go over 7.5 or under 7.5. And if you bet the under 7.5, that means you're betting that he's going to go under. If you bet the over at 7.5, that means you're betting that he's going to go over. Now, it also looks like FanDuel is pricing both sides of this at minus 114. And given our previous example, taking into consideration that they're charging VIG on both sides, their goal here is to charge an equal amount of VIG that makes sense on both sides based on the percent odds that they think that Hartenstein's going to go over or under. Now stay with me here. Let's actually take a look at another example. Tyrese Halliburton, one of the most popular NBA players today. You'll notice here, minus 102 on the over at 17.5 and under 17.5 is set to minus 130. So if I punch in the calculator here, FanDuel's basically saying, hey, this guy has a 50.5% chance to hit the over. And he also has, not minus 103, minus 130, has a 56.52% chance to go under. Now, do some quick math, and you know that equals over 100%. So you'll quickly realize that the implied odds really are just the price. Because when you add those two numbers, 50.5 and 56.5 together, you get about 107%. That extra percent is the VIG that FanDuel is charging for that specific bet. So the implied odds really aren't a true percentage. So how do we find that real percentage? Because again, I'll show you how and why it's beneficial for plus EV betting. Now let's go back to Hartenstein's over and under odds, set to minus 114 on both sides. What I'm using is called a no VIG fair odds calculator. And what that does is it simply takes out the added tax or the added price to show you the true percent odds to hit for both sides. Since both sides were equal to minus 114, we're taking out that tax completely, and we're seeing that each side, the true probability for both sides to hit is a coin flip chance, 50-50% chance. But because FanDuel has to make money, they're going to charge more than 100%, right? That added VIG. So assuming that they are setting an exact super sharp line, they're going to make about 7% over the long term for every type of similar bet that they are setting, like Isaiah Hartenstein. And if we look at the Halliburton example, his under was set to minus 130, which the true probability by using this calculator is 52.82% chance. And his over is 47.18% chance, of course, according to the no VIG fair odds calculator. And that's all the calculator really does, is it takes out the VIG and shows you the true odds to hit. Now, why is this relevant? Why do we want to know the true probability of what the sports books, a super sharp sports book like FanDuel, why do we care what their true odds to hit really are for each one of their player props? And that is the most important lesson I want you guys to take away from this video is how to identify a plus EV bet and why these percentages actually matter. Now let's walk through an example, and this is everybody's favorite plus EV betting example. Let's say you're flipping a coin 100 times. Or let's actually just say 1,000, so we have a larger sample size. Over the long term, the law of large numbers is going to suggest that you're going to come out to pretty much 50-50 every single time, especially the larger the sample size gets. Of course, this is assuming a non-weighted standard quarter. Now let's say this. Every single time that you flip that coin, you're betting $100. Every single time it lands on heads, you're getting $190 back, $190.90, right? So you're really only winning an additional $90.90 or minus 110 odds. You're betting minus 110 odds, $100 every single time that you flip that coin, and every single time it lands on heads, you get paid out. Hopefully that light bulb is coming on now, because you know over the long term, this is going to come out to exactly a 50% chance, 500 times on tails, 500 times on heads, give or take, and you're more than likely going to lose money over the long term. Because you aren't doubling up your money every single time you land on heads, you're actually losing near $10. And that is exactly how the sports books work. That's exactly how American odds work and the pricing of each one of these sports bets. Now let's actually walk through another example, a very similar example, except now we're going to be flipping a weighted coin. What if we were to flip that coin and it was a weighted coin? That heads, now we know, has about a 60% chance, real true odds to hit. And tails has about a 40% chance. This means every single time that I flip this coin, it's going to land on heads 60% of the time, and on tails, it's only going to land 40% of the time. And to make this example very simple, let's just hypothetically say we're doubling up our money every single time, which means every $100 that I bet on heads, I'm going to win $100. But the heads has a 60% chance to hit. You know you're going to make money in the long term the more times that you flip this coin. And this is why price comparing makes a lot more sense when it comes to sports betting, because each one of these sports books sets these prices differently. And you can find plus EV bets just like the example I gave you with the coin flip. Because if I have the chance to double up my money every single time I flip a coin on heads, but I really know it has a 60% chance to hit, I'm taking that bet 100% of the time, right? So what if I knew that true percent odds to hit for a specific bet, and I was able to compare that directly to a specific sports book where they might have mispriced that bet, and the risk of those odds far outweigh the actual price that I'm getting paid? That would be pretty cool, huh? And there is a way to do that. What you see in front of you is a line comparing tool, otherwise known as Upside. Upside.tools, if you guys are curious about the actual URL being used. This is my personal tool. This is what I use to identify plus EV bets and become a profitable sports bettor. What we're looking at here is specifically the FanDuel line comparing tool, right? And we're going to be looking at an example from NHL. Seth Jones specifically here in the very first column. He has a projection to hit the over 1.5 total shots on goal for the entire game, right? That's being offered at plus 122. And then the under, so at 1.5 to hit the under, is set to minus 160. And what I want to know as a sharp sports bettor is, what is FanDuel pricing this as in terms of a percent odds to hit or an implied odds, right? Like, what does this actual American odds mean to me in terms of a percentage, right? Well, plus 122 equals 45.05% odds to hit. As we talked about earlier, this is also including the VIG within this price. What you'll quickly notice here is that DraftKings, Caesars, BetMGM, Fliff are all setting the exact same player prop over at plus 100, plus 105, plus 100. We're going to go ahead and call the market average plus 103. Plus 103 and plus 122 are two completely different implied odds, right? Because at plus 122, for every $100 I bet, I'm getting $122 if this bet hits. But at plus 103, I'm getting $103 for every $100 that I bet. So literally a $19 difference. And that's just one singular bet. But just because that price is better doesn't necessarily mean it's a plus EV bet. Because I need to know the true percent odds for this plus 122 prop on FanDuel to hit or not. I need to know the actual percentage, right? So what do? We head back to the NoVig Fair Odds calculator. The really cool thing about Upside is that it's automatically devigging the market average, right? The entire average of the market in terms of their exact percent odds to hit, right? So if we go back here and let's just take DraftKings, for instance, they set theirs to plus 100 and minus 130, which means that they are actually viewing the over hitting at a 46.94% chance. And FanDuel is pricing this as hitting at a 45.05% chance. So even after taking out the VIG, the true odds for this exact bet to hit is actually 46.94% chance, according to not just one, not two, not three, not even four, 5 total sportsbooks are pretty much in agreement with this price. And Sleeper and Underdog, I missed a couple ones over here, are actually setting this even higher in terms of a percent odds to hit. So if one sportsbook, 2 sportsbooks, 3 sportsbooks, a whole bunch of sportsbooks agree with one price, and you identify one outlying price that is that far off, that is what is considered a plus EV bet. And we make it super easy at Upside. So at Upside, you can see here, according to the market, this has a 46.47% chance to hit, and this equates to a 1.42% chance to hit. And all you really need to look at is one singular column, the plus EV percentage column. As long as that is over 0%, you're hitting a plus EV bet. Now relating this back to our example, if you're flipping a coin, right? And you're getting $122 every single time that coin lands on heads. And that coin happens to land on heads 46.47% of the time. That means you are going to make money in the long term, right? The more times you flip the coin, the more times you're going to make money because the price you're getting paid out outweighs the risk. This is going to land on heads 46.47% of the time, and I'm getting paid out at a $122 clip. And thinking back to our stock example, when you have a very inefficient market and you're able to set different prices for the exact same kind of product, in this sports betting industry, we're setting different prices for different sports bets, right? If you have a bunch of different sports books that are setting the exact same price, it's more likely that that price is the true price for those odds. These sports books are always adjusting their prices depending on how much money is being put on one side or the other and how much risk they're willing to take on. And when you get an inefficient market like that, us as sharp sports bettors can take advantage. And that's it. That is exactly how to become a plus EV bettor through the form of line comparing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that subscription button, notification bell, and of course smash that like button for all of our future plus EV betting content. With all that being said, have a great rest of your day. Bye.